Protection Division's Land Protection Branch. Today's date is Tuesday, February 21st, 2023. The purpose of this meeting is to take comments on the draft mining land use plan for Twin Pines Minerals' proposed demonstration project for mining heavy mineral sands near St. George, Charlton County, Georgia. The northern boundary of the site is located approximately 2.9 miles southeast from the nearest boundary of the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge. The mining land use plan identifies Twin Pine Minerals' written proposal for accomplishing land use objectives on the permitted land in accordance with the Surface Mining Act and the rules for surface mining. The mining land use plan will be used to determine the ability of mining to be conducted within proximity to sensitive environmental resources. While all comments are welcome, the division is specifically interested in comments to address whether the draft mining land use plan and supporting documents adequately meet these statutory and regulatory requirements. This is a brief view of the location of Charlton County, Georgia, and the location of the mine in proximity to the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge. This is an overview of the mining site and location of the water management ponds that you see in blue. As you see in this slide, the mining operation will begin at the southern part of the site and move north over a 4-year period of time. An agency-approved mining land use plan is required under Georgia's Surface Mining Act and rules. The plan must include a description of the proposed mining process, provisions for the protection of adjacent watersheds from effects of erosion and sedimentation, and a land reclamation plan when the mining operation is complete. In this instance, the plan must also identify impacts to adjacent natural resources and, when applicable, a plan to alleviate and/or mitigate effects of such impact. Given the proposal's proximity to the Okefenokee Wildlife Refuge, the division elected to place the draft mining land use plan out for public review and comment. Comments on the draft plan may be made in writing or orally at one of the 2 scheduled virtual public meetings. The division will not be responding to technical comments as they are received. All comments received until the close of the comment period will be considered by the agency as it makes a final decision on the mining land use plan. Comments already submitted need not be resubmitted. The division will prepare a public document responding to comments made and indicating any changes to the proposal as a response to comments received. Agency response to comments and finalization of the mining land use plan can take anywhere from several days to several months to complete, depending on the number and complexity of the comments received. Good comments on the mining land use plan, additional analysis, data, technical perspectives, mitigation measures, etc., helps the division make good decisions, and we look forward to the process. All documents open for public comment may be found at the division webpage for Twin Pines. Public notice was released on January 19th, 2023. Public meetings are taking place today and on the 23rd, 2023. End of the public notice period is close of business 4:30 p.m. on March 20th, 2023. The Twin Pines Minerals project, as currently proposed, requires multiple permits from the division, including a surface mining permit, a water withdrawal permit, and an air quality permit. Permits establish the activities a facility can conduct and the conditions under which it can conduct them. Once a mining land use plan is finalized, the division will then proceed to the development of these draft permits. It is important to note that the surface mining permit will incorporate requirements or mitigation measures included in an approved mining land use plan. Some of these permits have public notice and comment periods established by law. Draft permits, when available, will be considered as a group and have a comment period separate from the current one. I will now turn the meeting back over to Mike. Mike, unmute yourself, please.
At today's meeting, we have 129 attendees. 81 participants have registered to speak. Your names will be called in the order that you registered. Once your name is read, you will be unmuted and will have 10 seconds to speak. We will ask each comment to be 2 minutes or less and be as brief and concise as possible. You will see a warning slide when 15 seconds remain. If you go over the 2 minutes, we may automatically mute you after the 15-second warning. Please speak slowly and clearly so that others can hear you in the meeting and we can capture your comments in the recording. Written comments are being accepted until March 20th, 2023 at twinpines.comment@dnr.ga.gov. Hannah Hill will begin calling names at this time.
I will begin reading names from the registered list. I'd like to go ahead and apologize for any mispronounced names. Some names I'll have to spell out. First to speak is Josh Marks.
Hello, my name is Josh Marks, and I am president of Georgians for the Okefenokee, a statewide organization devoted to protecting the swamp from the Twin Pines project. The draft mining land use plan violates the Georgia Surface Mining Act and its implementing regulations for the following reasons. First, the act and the rules require the plan to demonstrate the project is consistent with local land use and protective of adjacent natural resources, but the plan does neither. Conservation of and visitation to the adjacent Okefenokee is the predominant local land use, and maintaining the ecological integrity of the swamp is therefore vital. However, according to numerous independent scientists, the mine will damage the swamp in two primary ways. First, by lowering the swamp's water level, and second, by dumping over 1 ton per day of salt into the swamp as a result of its wastewater evaporation. Secondly, the act and the rules require sound conservation and engineering principles be used to protect the public interest in natural resources. However, EPD and Twin Pines have failed to use either. Specifically, according to a letter released yesterday from 11 of the country's leading hydrologists, EPD used the wrong river gauge 15 miles downstream of the swamp to evaluate the mine's hydrologic impacts instead of a gauge right next door. This would be like going to a doctor for a shoulder sprain. The doctor instead examines your ankle and declares your shoulder to be fine. This renders the mining plan grossly defective. Finally, Twin Pines and its executives have an atrocious track record of misrepresentation and pollution with this project, its prior Florida project, and its affiliated bioenergy projects in Georgia. These violations have resulted in well over $1 million in fines and settlements paid. Twin Pines is a bad actor and simply can't be trusted to safely execute this plan. Accordingly, EPD should immediately rescind the land use plan and deny Twin Pines surface mining permit application. Thank you.
Next to speak is Emily Floor.
Emily Floor, if you're on the call, your time has started. we'll move on to the next one.
Brian Foster.
Hey, good evening. Thank you, EPD, for putting this together and allowing us to comment. I hearken a lot of comments that Mr. Marks said, but also want to put in context the importance of the Okefenokee Swamp. At more than 400,000 acres, the Okefenokee is a national wilderness area. That's the highest level of protection afforded by the federal government. It's the largest national wildlife refuge in the eastern United States. It's a gold tier international dark sky park, and it's a national natural landmark. This is a destination reserved for only the best examples of biological and geological features in the country, and it's located right here in Georgia. With opportunities for boating, for birding, for fishing, for photography, for outdoor adventure, for hunting, and nearby attracting more than 650,000 visits a year. It supports more than 800 jobs. The National Wildlife Refuge provides more economic benefit to each of Georgia and Florida than any other national wildlife refuge. It's home to the headwaters of two recreationally and ecologically significant rivers, the Suwannee and the St. Mary's. And this mining project has drawn an unprecedented level of opposition throughout all the opportunities for public comment to either Georgia EPD, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. There's been more than 100,000 comments submitted in opposition to this mining proposal and in support of the Okefenokee Swamp. It's not just environmental and conservation organizations who are opposed to this mining project. Local communities, former federal, state officials from both sides of the aisle, independent experts and scientists, and faith leaders have spoken out in favor of protecting the iconic Okefenokee Swamp. And in September 22, a poll showed that 69% of Georgians want Governor Brian Kemp to take immediate action to protect the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge from a proposed mine near its borders. We can't gamble with this. This is an iconic national and international resource. If we lose it, it's gone. EPD, we hope you take this into consideration. What a wonderful asset we have here in Georgia that's loved by many. Thank you.
Next to speak is Dolores Stanley.
Hannah, she's not in attendance. Move on. Yeah.
Okay. Anna Peterson.
Hi, my name is Dr. Anna Peterson. I have a PhD in ecology and evolutionary biology. I'm a resident of Georgia and also a lover of the Okefenokee Swamp. I also have experience working as a federal contractor related to issues of the National Environmental Policy Act, as well as federal wilderness and wilderness character. I feel generally disappointed that in August 2022, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers retracted its earlier decision regarding Clean Water Act protections to the nearly 400 acres of wetlands on the proposed mining site on Trail Ridge and adjacent to the Okefenokee Swamp. I feel that state protections are not sufficient to protect Georgia's wetlands. They're limited in scope, and there really underscores the importance of federal Clean Water Act protections that need to be in place to protect this wetland from the Twin Pines proposed mining project. I also have concern about the impact that this would have on federally designated wilderness, which was already mentioned is the highest sort of protection that exists in the United States, and it is written into law that we need to protect wilderness and wilderness character. So yes, that's my my concerns regarding this project, among many others.
Okay, next to speak is Kevin McLeod.
Here we go. I'm unmuted. Hi. I'm Kevin McLeod. I'm a resident in Savannah. And I just wanted to say that number one, I've been to the Okefenokee, and if you've been there, you understand it. It's amazing. I've paddled through the Okefenokee. I also want to say that, going to places like this with groups like the Georgia Conservancy, you just make really, special memories. And, I've actually been to several parks, and with Brian Foster, who just spoke, and other folks that are, friends. And Okefenokee is not like anywhere else really in the state or even in the country. I was actually a wetland biologist long ago, and just to simplify it, I would say that they're saying there won't be any impacts, but they're mining right near it. I mean, if anyone's ever been at the beach and dug a hole, you know that the water's gonna come into the hole. So I would say that that's rather disingenuous. Lastly, I'll just say I've talked with a lot of friends and neighbors, bipartisan. Just like Brian noted, there's strong support up and down the coast and around the state. So EPD, I hope that you preserve this for families from Georgia and from around the country and even the world to enjoy for the future, because it's a truly unique place. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna have to spell this name. First name A K I, last name Urrutia.
They aren't present.
Okay. Next to speak is Roderick Jude.
Not present.
Sean Mabogo. Larissa Carpenter. Philip Pritchard. Was that a not present on that one?
Yes.
Okay. Gina Caravello. Elizabeth Sudith. Owen Wright. Randy Tate. John S. Porterman.
Yes, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. All right, well, I'm the Swanee Riverkeeper, so I'm very concerned with water. I noticed there seem to be contradictory statements made in the mining land use plan. On the one hand, no processed water will be discharged from the site. First of all, I don't believe that, because these same miners are under a Florida consent order for spilling wastewater from two titanium dioxide mine sites in North Florida on Trail Ridge. But back to the contradiction, it also says all processed water will be returned to the basin, so it will be continually recycled after use. Yet, it talks about evaporators including floating evaporators that will displace many gallons of water. Okay, so which is it? No processed water will be discharged. Some of it will be, it will all be recycled, or some of it will be evaporated. And if it is evaporated, the evaporation will concentrate residues such as mercury, which is deposited from the air into the soil. And as previously mentioned, while hydrologists say the McClinney St. Mary's River gauge is the wrong one to use, not only the ammoniac gauge should be used, but also the Traders Hill gauge on the St. Mary's River downstream of creeks such as Boone Creek, which run east from the mine site. And the Fargo Suwannee River gauge should be used because there's no way to know whether the mine affects the Suwannee River without measurements. All the gauge sites should also be used to measure water quality, because how else will we know if the mine affects the rivers? And I may put more in written comments, but for now, since the application is for a demonstration mine, citing the northern boundary of the demonstration area, the distance from that to the swamp is misleading. According to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the rest of the land the miners own goes north to within 400 feet of the Okefenokee swamp. If they get their foot in the door with this, they will not want to stop. So I recommend EPD stop this incursion into the Okefenokee swamp and its environs now, rather than waiting till later. The swamp is too important to risk for white paint, which is what the titanium dioxide is mostly used for. Please reject this permit application.
Next to speak is Grace Agnew. Renna Ann Peck. Teresa Brown. Patricia Kent. Charles McMillan. It's not present either. Okay. Russell Bronsky. Lynn Merrick. Jeff McCutcheon. Marilee Malwitz-Gibson.
Am I muted? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
we can.
Okay. All right. So, Marilee Malwitz-Gibson, I am representing a couple ways here. I am a downstream resident in the watershed of the Suwannee, on the Florida side. And while I understand this is a Georgia concern, since waters know no boundaries, I have been addressing my organization, our Santa Fe River, and myself in various meetings since I first heard about Twin Pines several years ago. I even came to meetings in Georgia to be outspoken. So I am on record today outspoken about this plan for Twin Pines to mine for titanium and rare earth. Let's get realistic. It's not just titanium. And it's not just dewatering. It's actually using chemicals, all kinds of chemicals. And I would suggest asking for the OSHA chemical list that they intend to use here, because that's really what's going to be polluting not only the Okefenokee, but all of the residents and all of the habitat in and around the system. I was visiting at the Maxville, Trail Ridge, Camorrs, Twin Pines mining operation in the past few weeks in Florida. And it's true, they are violating their National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit on a regular basis. And the people I visited in that community are dying from rare forms of cancer, from blood disorders, from skin disorders, from lung conditions, all associated, they believe, ninth generation, seventh generation families, heritage families that have been usurped by this mine that has wrapped itself around them, polluting their branches, their waterways downstream. So I just want to be on record that the environmental groups in and around the Swanee River Basin, Santa Fe River, are extremely concerned about Twin Pines making mining occur anywhere near the Okefenokee. Thank you very much.
Next to speak is Jim Tatum. Trevor Greer, or Gear, excuse me.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hi, I'm Dr. Treva Gear, resident of Valdosta, Georgia. I'm also an Army veteran and a veteran educator as well. And I'm highly concerned about the potential mining operation at Okefenokee Swamp because, well, as a science teacher teaching biology for years, many students from far and wide, even from as far as North Atlanta, I've heard that just recently visited the swamp, visit the Okefenokee. Many people touring it, looking at the biodiversity. I'm saying we have some of the highest levels of biodiversity in that swamp, anywhere in the country. And so it concerns me that we're willing to threaten this national treasure with mining for titanium dioxide that could be mined elsewhere. This is supposed to be a wildlife refuge. And if we're talking about leaving something for our youth, leaving something for our grandchildren, leaving something for our children, and we're willing to disturb this very this priceless natural resource for a strip of mining, that is preposterous, and I think we really need to rethink that. Just hearing the comments of what has been said, because I understand that if something is disrupted, and we talk about this in ecology all the time, if you disrupt the system, it cannot be repaired. It will cause irreparable damage. If it messes up the hydrology, it doesn't take a rocket science to know this, and scientists to know this. If they come in and mess with it and disturb it, it can't be fixed. Then you're going to need the Army Corps engineers to come and repair something. What if it drains the swamp? It is a problem. I think about the fact that the speaker who was just talking about the chemicals that will be used. See, that's not even talked about, and that's a major concern because they're not just going to be using regular things. The community of Folkestone is an environmental justice community. We need to protect the swamp, and we need to protect the people. We need the EPD to be protected as it purports to be.
We're going to go back to Jim Tatum. Jim, I think you have your hand raised. If you want to unmute yourself.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. My name is Jim Tatum. I'm a member of our Santa Fe River of Fort White, Florida. One of the greatest dangers posted by digging 50 to 70 feet deep and mixing the soils is that subterranean water flows would be permanently disabled. Scientists say that Trail Ridge, part of which lies in the proposed mine area, serves as a barrier on the eastern edge of the swamp, containing it and preventing it from flowing eastward. Different layers of soils and mixtures of sands and clays are arranged naturally to allow porous flows and impermeable barriers which now contain the swamp. 70-foot excavations would drastically alter the arrangement of these soils, causing the distinct possibility of swamp groundwater moving eastward and draining the swamp. Twin Pines mining plan shows no guarantee this would not happen. Loss of groundwater feeding the swamp would effectively destroy it along with the many plants and animals living there. Mining would withdraw 1.44 million gallons of water per day, which will likely lower the water table beneath the swamp by as much as 9 feet. Twin Pines President Steve Engel has foolishly stated that his mine would not impact the swamp, but withdrawing this amount of water cannot but impact the area. Tearing up the land on trail roads would also destroy wetlands and intermittent streams feeding the swamp, which would irreversibly impact Okefenokee. In addition, I would say that Twin Pines Mineral has proved to be a very incompetent and corner-cutting company, as proved by their problems and violations mining in Florida. If mining near the swamp is a terribly bad idea, and Twin Pines is the least least qualified company to mine there. So it's a bad idea put forth by a bad company. Thank you.
Stephanie Ramage.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, very good. Hi. I grew up in Lawrence County, Georgia, and I'm one of those many school kids who for probably a century or more now are rounded up each year and taken to see the Okefenokee Swamp. For me, the first time that happened was when I was in, I think, 5th grade. I fell in love with it and went back as often as I could. I took my son there, and I look forward to taking him back many more times. I think that the Okefenokee Swamp, it's more than just a swamp. It is the birthright of the people of South Georgia. And I think the challenge that lies before them now isn't so different from the challenge that was before us in 2018, when 60,000 people commented and said, we don't want mining interrupting the Okefenokee Swamp. That has not changed. If anything, there are more people today who oppose it. Back in 2018, DuPont was interested in locating on the edge of the swamp. DuPont, an internationally renowned mining operation, and they came to understand and see that mining had no place on the banks of the Okefenokee. And I think we can probably put more faith in them than we can in Twin Pines. Even they saw that it shouldn't happen. And they ended up donating hundreds of acres to the wildlife refuge as a result. They were truly converted. Anyone who has eyes to see and ears to hear, who can the Okefenokee, can see that it is unlike any place in the world. It is North America's it is the largest blackwater swamp in North America, but it is also its own very special ecological gem. So many people have called it the Amazon of America, America's own Amazon, and they're right about that. Look, don't trade. South Georgia, don't trade what you've got. Nobody else has got. Don't trade it for a handful of jobs, because that's all you're going to get. Mining is overwhelmingly automated today. Thank you.
Next to speak is Heather Edens.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, I am Dr. Heather Edens, and I'm speaking to you today as a concerned private citizen of Georgia, and I strongly oppose the permit application of Twin Pines Minerals to establish a surface mine along Trail Ridge. The Twin Pines Minerals Company has a history of disregarding appropriate environmental safeguards and a company culture that considers violations as part of doing business. Already, they had ignored the county permitting process and broke ground on its staging areas, prematurely conducting land disturbance activities, resulting in the intervention by state regulatory agencies. Based on their past actions, I do not believe they can safely operate a mine in this fragile environment. As you have heard, this mine would result in an ecological disaster for the swamp, downstream rivers, and the downstream Florida aquifer that provides safe drinking water to the citizens of that area. The placement of a strip mine at Trail Ridge is a dangerous proposition, and I would like to now share with you some personal experience I had by visiting the Okefenokee. Over this past Christmas weekend, I had the opportunity to experience the swamp firsthand. As we paddled deep into the swamp, we were met with an abundance of wildlife in and on the water, on the peat bogs, and in the trees. We were surrounded by tall cypress and pine trees and Spanish moss. We saw up-close alligators, turtles, wood ducks, cranes, cormorants, herons, and ibises. We were even lucky enough to spot river otters playing amongst themselves. At one point, we were surrounded by trees chock full of ibises. A quick count was well over 30 birds. The air was clear and clean, and the water was so still it acted like a mirror, giving an exact reflection of the trees and sky. I have lived in some of the most beautiful locations in the United States, including Montana and Utah. These states are well known for their natural beauty, and the national parks and forests draw millions of people each year. While we don't have a national park in Georgia, we do have the Okefenokee Swamp. Putting a mine next to the Okefenokee is like proposing a mine next to Yellowstone National Park, something I could not imagine. The Okefenokee is one of the few remaining natural treasures. In this time of unprecedented environmental change due to human actions, we have an opportunity to firmly save these places and say they are important and worth protecting. I urge the EPA to firmly say no to the proposed Twin Pines mine.
Next to speak is Simon Taylor.
Not present.
George Penniman.
Not
Elizabeth Land. Sarah Burnett. Caleb Jameson. Taylor Green. Juliet Cohen. Elise Perry. Ellis Wynn.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. All right. Well, I guess I'll just introduce myself. I'm Ellis. My dad. Second. Grab this. Well, start off, I guess. My dad was a game warden in Georgia for 20 or 30 years before he eventually retired. And I have been to the swamp probably more times than I can count. And I first heard about this actually about a month ago. And I was really taken aback that it had even gotten to this point, that we're at the stage where we might actually approve a mine next to the Okefenokee Swamp. And I think, like someone said earlier, it would be like putting a mine next to Yellowstone. And in the South, the next closest thing that we have to Yellowstone is the Okefenokee. It's an incredible place. It's already been mentioned before. It's incredibly diverse. And I mean, it's a mine, you know? It's going to cause more damage than we know at the moment because no one's ever done this before. I strongly oppose this. I mean, I can't really put into words how much I oppose it other than continuously writing to DNR and the EPA about this project being undertaken. But yeah, so strongly oppose this. If you think that you're going to put a mine next to the Okefenokee Swamp and no one's going to bat an eye about it because it's a swamp, you're incredibly mistaken. Thank you.
Rhett Jackson.
Hello, my name's Rhett Jackson. Oh, no. Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I got a message that said I wasn't. I'm Rhett Jackson. I'm a professor of hydrology at the University of Georgia, and I will reiterate two phrases from the Georgia surface mining law. And one is that any mine should protect the resources of the state of Georgia, and it should be consistent with land use in the area of the mine. And clearly the land use of concern here is the Okefenokee swamp. And so I want to speak to the hydrologic change that this mining proposal will impose upon the Okefenokee swamp. So to keep the mining pit dry, the mining land use plan says that the operation will have to remove 1.13 million gallons a day of water continuously, and that will be removed from the superficial aquifer. Since Trail Ridge sits on a hydrologic divide between the swamp and the lower St. Mary's, that means half of that water will be taken from the water budget of the swamp. So if we convert that 1.13 million gallons a day into cubic feet per second, which is what American Hydraulics use, that's 1.75 cubic feet per second. So half of that is 0.87 cubic feet per second that will be lost from the swamp. Now the swamp is a very drought sensitive ecosystem. The swamp looks big in area, but it's only half a meter deep. It doesn't have a lot of storage, and it doesn't have a lot of groundwater input to keep it wet during droughts. So the little bits of groundwater input from Trail Ridge are really important to the swamp. And if we remove that amount of water from the hydrograph at where it's measured by the United States Geological Survey at Moniac, Georgia, it basically triples the frequency of severe drought in the southeastern portion of the swamp. Basically, right now, because of the drought sensitivity, the North Fork of the North Prong of the St. Mary's doesn't flow 3% of the time. With the mine operation, it won't flow over 9% of the time. It will be a tripling of that drought frequency, and that's too much for what we can allow. Thank you.
Next to speak is Drago Tesnovich. Maylin Belmondo.
Good evening. My name is Maylin Belmondo, and I'm a local resident of Pierce County, Blackshear. I grew up in Pierce County, and I spent many summers in my childhood under my grandmother's care. She would take me and my brother to the Okefenokee Swamp in Waycross, so we could try to catch a glimpse of old Oscar before he passed away. In the summers, my family and I went camping, and some of my greatest memories are from Fargo, Stephen C. Foster State Park, and also trolling around in the swamp near Billy's Island. Now that my children are in elementary school, we have started going canoeing as a family and patrolling around in the waters of the area, and finally find it highly enjoyable. I've also had the pleasure of chaperoning some of their field trips to the swamp with their classmates at Blackshear Elementary School. And I have seen firsthand the look of their faces when they experience the swamp, some of them for the very first time, and take a boat ride through the channels and get up close to a gator for the first time in their life. And it is truly awesome. I also look forward to planning our first overnight canoe trip into one of the shelters so we can lay out under the stars and enjoy that the darkness of the swamp due to the lack of light pollution. And so when I think about all these memories that I have, both me and my childhood and then my kids, and as we grow older together, I think about how traumatic this mining project can be. And I just want to go on record and say I oppose the Twin Pines mining operation proposal because of the impacts it will likely have in the future for both me and my children and for this iconic natural resource. To me, it's just not worth it for the risk of titanium, which has its choice in sources. Thank you so much for your time.
Dina Branch,
Jerry Rivers, James Daniel,
James, you have been unmuted if you would like to speak. We can move on.
John Thiel, Rebecca Lapiri,
Hi, my name is Becca LaPere. I'm a North Carolina resident. I have yet to visit the Okefenokee, but hearing these comments has inspired me, and I'll definitely be visiting soon. This is a special place, and this mining operation will devastate it. We need to protect what is not yet lost. Listen to the experts. Listen to the evidence. Listen to your people. This is an easy decision that should have been made long ago. Make the right decision now. Deny this permit. Thank you.
Wynn Huff, Malcolm Adams,
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name is Malcolm Adams. I'm a Nassau County, Florida resident. I live about 15 miles the way the crow flies from where this mine will be. And I've spent about 50 years boating, fishing, and yes, scuba diving under the St. Mary's River. And you can see about 2 feet. It's like being in a glass of iced tea. Lots of history there. I am opposed to this because well, you've heard all the track record of the Okefenokee or the mining company, but I have some data and it's based on common sense. It doesn't make sense to allow a mine less than 3 miles away from the corner of the Okefenokee swamp. And that should be data enough to say, no, we don't want a mine there. Thank you so much.
Perkins Hendricks, Mark Albertine, Ashley Goen, Bob Sherrier,
Hello, my name is Bob Sherrier, and I'm an attorney with the Southern Environmental Law Center. EPD should not proceed with this ill-advised proposal. And looking at the language that's been up on the screen about next steps, I have to say, I hope EPD has not already decided to finalize a mining land use plan before receiving all comments on the draft plan. We will submit more detailed comments in writing, but I want to talk tonight about a critical unanswered question in the draft plans, and that unanswered question is, what is the extent of the cumulative adverse impacts of mining the thousands of acres that Twin Pines has said it intends to mine next to the Okefenokee swamp? In May of 2020, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service said that the demonstration mine may establish a precedent to allow for cumulative impacts of other mining on Trail Ridge adjacent to the Okefenokee, and that due to differences in the hydrology and combining layers, the depth of the underlying aquifer along the length of the ridge, the demonstration mine may not show all of the cumulative impacts of mining along Trail Ridge. That was in 2020, and these are questions that have been asked for several years now, and the public still does not have an answer. EPD has the authority and should use it to assess cumulative impacts before deciding whether to move forward on this first phase of the Twin Pines mine. Under the Surface Mining Act, EPD has the power and duty to collect information on surface mining and mining land use plans, and to conduct research studies of mining land uses. The General Assembly also built in flexibility for EPD to address unusual circumstances related to proposed mines. EPD has the power and the duty to exercise all incidental powers necessary to carry out the purposes of this part, and those purposes explicitly include conservation and environmental protection. When a mining company seeks to excavate hundreds to thousands of acres next to a resource as important to Georgia, the country, and the world as the Okefenokee Swamp, EPD must require additional assurances and proof from those proposing the surface mine. This is well within EPD's broad authority under the Act and the rules, which state that the application shall contain such other information as is required by the director. If there's a point of no return for the swamp, somewhere between one shovel of sand and 8,000 acres, EPD and the public should know exactly where, and we should not allow it. I ask that EPD not proceed until it addresses these questions about mining operations along the Okefenokee's Trail Ridge. Thank you.
Next to speak is Natalie Sweat. Audrey Williams. Daniel McIntyre. Allison, I'll have to spell this one, McCullough.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Okay, you can begin speaking.
Okay, yes, ma'am, thank you. I'm actually a Nassau County resident, and I live right along the St. Mary's River. I'm fortunate to live right here on the St. Mary's River. But I'm coming at you. My master's is in sustainable agriculture, and I would like to make a reference. We spent a lot of time at work when I was at the University of Florida, working along the Everglades and spending time with impacts of the environment that took place 10 and 20 years after the fact. So I've heard a lot of people talk about data, that's current now. There's been a lot of opposition, but I think that what we fail to often take into consideration is those long-term effects. We're looking right now at the river, we're looking at the ocean, but no one can say in 10, 15, 20 years what this negative impact on our environment. Everyone's talking about the here and now, and there's a predominant amount of negative information. But my concern is for my children, for my students, for my constituents along the river, really the implications that we will be facing in 15, 20 years from this decision. And so I would really just encourage the council to not just look at the here and now, but as elected officials, our whole goal is to leave better than what we found. And I'm always looking at economic opportunity too. I want to provide jobs and a stable economy for my local residents, but at what cost? And I hope that there's been enough research and to understand that this really isn't worth the long-term cost of what we're going to pay. So I thank y'all so much for your time and your consideration.
Cindy Creeman. Dana Davis. Emily Bragg. Tina McElroy Ansa. Daniel Elliott.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, good evening. My name is Dan Elliott. I'm a professional archaeologist. I live in Effingham County, Georgia. Have over 45 years of field archaeology experience in Georgia, many other parts of the United States and the world. Several decades ago, I worked on a secret project for DuPont, who sought to mine titanium on Trail Ridge on the east side of the Okefenokee Swamp. It was a bad idea. The public reacted, and DuPont withdrew their plans for mining in that area. The project I worked on was a preliminary archaeological reconnaissance and historical background review for the project area. I worked on the historical background part of it, and my colleagues did the field survey work. All of us came up with the same answer. That area is literally crawling with historical and archaeological resources, many of which are of national and international importance, and mining in this area is not a bright idea in regards to archaeology and American history, and our shared archaeological and historical irreplaceable resources. I did a quick personal review of the Cultural Resource Survey document done for Twin Pines several years ago, and I was quite surprised that the archaeological contractor, found so little in that massive survey area. Now that Twin Pines has reared its head for another go at obliterating parts of Trail Ridge, it has my dander up. Of course, there are so many other reasons to oppose their mining permit, but the history and archaeology of the area is a prime concern to me. Of course, I also enjoy plants, animals, oxygen, clean water, and pristine natural beauty. I do not particularly enjoy strip mines. Please deny this permit. Thank you.
Next to speak is Megan, last name Huynh.
Good evening. My name is Megan Wynn, and I am a senior attorney at the Southern Environmental Law Center. Thank you to EPD for hosting this hearing tonight. As my colleague Bob mentioned, SELC will be submitting written comments next month memorializing our concerns about the proposed mine. But I'd like to focus tonight on a threshold issue that I believe warrants clarification here, and that is Twin Pines' federal permitting obligation. On page 2 of its application, Twin Pines represents that a federal Clean Water Act permit is not required. We disagree with this, and given the state's stated policy of not evaluating state permits until federal approvals have been issued, this really is a threshold issue here. So I want to give a little bit of very quick background here. When Twin Pines submitted its first permit applications in 2019, the company agreed that nearly all of the wetlands on the proposed mine site were protected by the Clean Water Act under the pre-2015 regulatory scheme. And at that point, there was no question that a federal permit was required. In 2020, the federal government passed a rule called the Navigable Waters Protection Rule that rolled back federal Clean Water Act protections. And under that rule, the Corps issued 2 jurisdictional determinations telling Twin Pines that the wetlands were no longer protected by the Clean Water Act, meaning that they didn't need a federal permit. Now, Twin Pines continues to point to those 2 jurisdictional determinations to say that it doesn't need a permit now. But as EPD knows, the Navigable Waters Protection Rule, which formed the basis for those determinations, has been vacated by 2 federal courts and is no longer in effect. As a result, the Corps' internal guidance says those determinations are no longer reliable. In other words, they don't and cannot, under the text of the statute itself, authorize the fill of these currently jurisdictional wetlands, which all parties agree that these are. And I want to make clear that it's not just SELC and other conservation groups that have taken this position. The Corps itself addresses this exact scenario in its own guidance documents, and I will read from those. The guidance says, can a non-jurisdictional determination made under the Navigable Waters Protection Rule, and that is exactly what we have here, be used to support the discharge of dredged or fill material into aquatic resources that are considered to be waters of the U.S. under the pre-2015 regime? Again, that is exactly what we have here. The answer is not without a permit. That's a direct quote from the guidance. Twin Pines has seen this guidance document. They have received a letter from the Corps inviting them to apply for a new or revised jurisdictional determination, but their application still states that no federal permit is necessary. And they say this even though, even under their own flawed interpretation, these negative jurisdictional determinations would expire in 2025, leaving at least several years of this process subject to federal oversight as it currently stands. So we hope that EPD will raise this question sooner rather than later, pursuant to its own policy of not evaluating these permits until all federal approvals have been issued, so that all parties can avoid the unnecessary time and expense of going through this process. Thank you.
Next to speak is Samantha Rafferty.
Hi, my name is Samantha Rafferty. I am an environmental educator, a bird watcher, and I have a personal connection to the Okefenokee Swamp. Many in the science community have already outlined how the proposed mining operation will not only destroy wetlands and intermittent streams on Trail Ridge, but will also impact the groundwater flows through Trail Ridge, leading to potentially permanently lower water levels in the Okefenokee Swamp and impacting water quality for the nearby St. Mary's and Swanee rivers. I want to paint a picture for you of what these effects will mean for my family to just demonstrate a fraction of the loss to humanity that might occur should these permits be authorized. Several generations of my husband's family were raised in Fargo, Georgia, along the Okefenokee. Before he passed, my husband's grandfather was the CEO of Superior Pines and helped develop the blueberry farming operation of that company's operations. His grandmother still holds property in Fargo, and we go to this special place as often as we can. Our extended family spends every Thanksgiving there. My 4-year-old son spends his time there with his cousins, searching for bugs and turtles, listening to the calls of woodpeckers, and counting the incredible number of stars at night. According to a 2022 letter from members of this scientific community through Science for Georgia, mining has the potential to increase fire risk to both the swamp and nearby private property, including timber and blueberry farms. This increased risk threatens the property that is so special to our family and the timber and blueberry farms that are part of our loved one's legacy. Mining also threatens the habitat of many animals, including several endangered species that our family and so many other tourists delight in seeing. Threats to wildlife are also threats to the communities along the Okefenokee, where tourism is an economic boon. Tourism would also be impacted by the light pollution inherent to mining operations. The stars my son marvels at would be dimmed, and the visitors from across the world flocking to see the famed dark skies of the swamp would diminish in turn. When you are considering permits for Twin Pines, I implore you to consider families like mine who have roots deep in the swamp. For so many families, the Okefenokee provides economic, social, recreational, and even spiritual sustenance. If water levels diminish, so too will the well-being of the people with their roots in the trembling earth. Please oppose this permit. Thank you.
Next to speak is Candace Jones. Phyllis Register. Renee, last name Grebe.
Hi, I'm Renee Grebe. I'm a resident of Virginia and a regular visitor to Okefenokee Swamp. I oppose the Twin Mines proposal. I've spent time basking in the glory of this incredible treasure. I've slept overnight among the alligators, the water, the stars, the peace of this place. This gem lives in Georgia. It can't move. The only way we protect this national treasure is to reject bad land use decisions in the important buffer area around this national wildlife refuge. I'm incredibly disappointed that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers last summer retracted its earlier decision guaranteeing Clean Water Act protections of the nearly 400 acres of wetlands in the proposed mining site on Trail Ridge and adjacent to the Okefenokee Swamp. While tonight the division is interested in comments to address whether the draft MLUP and supporting documents adequately meet statutory and regulatory requirements, I want to be clear that the statutory and regulatory requirements appear to be in flux based on the current and active lawsuits against the Army Corps of Engineers. But I do want to highlight what is right and moral can often be different and lagging behind what is legal and integrated into statutory and regulatory requirements. Mind you, it used to be legal to discriminate based on race, religion, sex, but we know better now. We have moved past embarrassing, outdated laws in some places. I'm asking the division to use great care in making this decision and make a decision that preserves the natural and economic treasure that is Okefenokee. The division has the real and present opportunity to get this land use right. Current state protections are not sufficient to protect Georgia wetlands. This is far more than putting at risk the recreational opportunities that I love. The previous administration's navigable water protection rule puts communities, businesses, and drinking water at risk. Please say no to the proposed Twin Peaks mine.
Sophia Rodriguez. Josh Marks.
Hello, I spoke. Hello, I spoke earlier tonight, so I will give up my my speaking slot for the next person.
Thank you.
Jonathan Andrew.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to comment. My name is John Andrew, and I'm the Georgia-Florida representative for the National Wildlife Refuge Association. The Refuge Association is a nonprofit that focused on the conservation of national wildlife refuges for future generations. And this includes the lands themselves, as well as the landscapes beyond the refuge boundary that can have an impact on the refuge itself. I'm a retired refuge manager and worked half of my 30-year career in the South and a lot of it in Georgia. And I've been visiting the Okefenokee for work or for pleasure for over 30 years. I hope to continue doing that as long as I live. My main concern was raised by Dr. Jackson, who spoke earlier, the hydrologist at the University of Georgia. This is about water, and taking 1 million gallons a day out of the water budget of a wetland like Okefenokee is not going to have a positive impact. It's going to change the ecology of the swamp. It's going to create a situation where public use, the canoe trails would probably be less usable in drought cycles, or maybe not even in drought cycles. I've also witnessed some of the major fires that have happened in the Okefenokee, and the water level there, it's going to drastically change the fire ecology. It's a fire adapted environment, but it's not an environment that evolved with 1 million less gallons of water in the water budget, and not to mention the quality of the water. Once a fire starts in there in the swamp, if the water levels are lowered, it'll spread out of the swamp, get into the private pine lands, which have been, for the most part, protected through the greater Okefenokee Association of Landowners and the cooperation that's existed over the years. But this lower water changes in the hydrology will have major impacts on fire ecology. And I hark back to the DuPont plans to mine Trail Ridge many years ago, over 20 years ago. I was present when Bruce Babbitt was there, my former boss, the Secretary of the Interior. He simply stated, as he often did, he summed it up in a few words, that Trail Ridge is the wrong place for a mine. It's still the wrong place for a mine, and I urge you to reject this permit application. Thank you.
Tommy Willis. Mary Gibson.
Mary, you've been allowed to speak if you would like to provide a comment. We could move on.
Caroline Rivard.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, I actually sent an email saying that I had changed my mind and wanted to just listen, but now that I'm given an opportunity to speak, I'm not a hydrologist. I'm not a lawyer, but I I do have a science degree, and I have been canoeing in the Okefenokee, and it is just a supremely beautiful place. I am concerned about the effects of mining along the Okefenokee, and I think it's a very bad idea. I know that we're supposed to particularly address the specifics of the permits, and I don't feel qualified to do that, but I do. I am concerned about the future of the Okefenokee. Thank you.
Alexander Ard Kelly.
Hello. Thank you, Georgia Environmental Protection Division, for hosting this forum. I believe that this land use plan, as provided by Twin Pines Minerals Lesser Liability Corporation, as Josh Marks very articulately detailed earlier, they provide this land use plan in a manner that showed the data they collected was either incompetently collected or collected in bad faith. When you're measuring the impact of something and you put your sensors 15 miles away instead of where the core of the impact is going to be, that doesn't smell like good work to me. And when you look at how they're currently being held accountable for their actions in Florida, maybe it was incompetence, but that's not what it looks like to me. And just for a little analogy, if 15 miles away, let's say they don't do a worse job than is in the plan, and 15 miles away there is only minimal damage. If you were sitting in your room and you saw a little trickle of blood come through the door, and you open your door, look down the hall, there's a little trail of blood, and you find out that goes 15 miles to a slaughterhouse that, whoops, we screwed up, and now they have a 15-mile river of blood, that is something that cannot and should not happen. And that's effectively, when I hear a 15-mile away scanner is only picking up minimal damage, that's exactly what I'm hearing will happen to the Okefenokee swamp. Twin Pines Minerals has a bad track record, and the EDP does not just have to deal with them right now. We see what happens when companies bite off more than they should. Just this year, January 6th, the EDP had to hold Sunbelt Forest Products accountable for the same thing, for putting toxic chemicals into the coastal Georgia ecosystem, destroying my hometown. As a Savannah boy that grew up on the marsh and swamp, this is all bad news to me. Protect now so we don't need to avenge later like we're already doing with Sunbelt Forest Products Corporation. Thank you.
Ann Stewart is next to speak. Andrew Schwab.
Hey, I'm a Georgia resident, actually all the way up here in Atlanta, but just wanted to make a comment to say that I love Georgia's natural resources. There's something that I think really makes the state special, and yeah, I would hate to see even the risk of losing one of our greatest ecosystems get lost. I think it would just be, it's not worth the risk. This is a special place. I'm actually going down to camp in a few weeks and really looking forward to that, and would hope to be able to give this to my, be able to experience this with my children later in life, and would hate to have to worry about, us messing this up.
I think Andrew Schwab might be finished speaking. So we'll call on Melanie Kim Smith. Jeanette Hansen.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, my name is Jeanette Hansen. I live in Decatur and have raised children in Georgia. When they were young, we would take them to the swamp where they acquired a love of nature in this remarkable place. They are now adults and have kept this appreciation and are passing it on to their children. As I understand it, the proposal made is to dredge the sand of Trail Ridge down to 50 feet below ground surface to process less than 1% of the dredged sand, which is of value to Twin Pines. The remaining 90% of the dredged sand will then be returned to the pit. Keep in mind that Trail Ridge was created over millions of years ago. Trail Ridge contains the swamp's water. There is no guarantee that the redeposited sand will have the same characteristics that Trail Ridge currently has. It's hard for me to believe that we are seriously considering putting in jeopardy this unique place for the benefit of a mining company. Does EPD have within its ranks the expertise to make this call? Thank you.
Leah Goff. Peter, I'm gonna have to spell this last name, Lefkowicz.
Peter, you're available to speak if you want to unmute. Please move on.
Sam Collier.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. My name is Sam Collier. In my 40 plus years in Georgia, I have been to the Okefenokee many times, brought my family, and we thoroughly enjoy it. I was a part of the team that successfully negotiated the no mine agreement with DuPont in the 90s. And the difference between that proposal and this one today is that DuPont was upfront about how much of the Trail Ridge they wanted to mine. They wanted to mine 38,000 acres. And of that, when they finally, we reached a no mine agreement, they protected 15,000 in the north. So there's a lot of land left to mine that is not protected. And that's where we face today. As Bob Sherrier said, there's 8,000 acres owned by Twin Pines, and they have not been forthcoming about the fact that they want to mine all 8,000 of their acres at least. They have shrunk the size of their site down to where we don't have any federal jurisdiction. We only have state jurisdiction. And basically, it doesn't get any better than when a person comes a-calling. DuPont had deep pockets. They had $45 billion in assets when they first came to Georgia, proposing to mine 38,000 acres. And I think one of the reasons that they realized, when they realized the gravity of what would happen if they created a problem with the draining of the swamp, they realized they could max out of their insurance policies, and then they would be self-insured for some of their $45 billion in assets. We don't know what Twin Pines has. They're a limited liability corporation. I have about 8 LLCs, maybe 10, I forget. I lose count of how many LLCs I have. because they're basically limited liability corporations. And so the EPD needs to do a worst case scenario. What happens if we see the beginnings of a major problem with this mine? What would the cost of remediating that come to? And what can Twin Pines post in advance, not just bonds, but a lot of surety of a lot of assets to remediate this? And if they cannot remediate that, then who foots the bill? And I think the answer to that last question is the Georgia taxpayers. So I would say there is not substantial evidence to make a determination to approve this mine, because we don't have security from them, and they're using absolutely brand new ideas about evaporating water that they've never used. Why would you use an experimental on your first experimental evaporation project on your very first time next to an international resource? It makes no sense. Please deny this permit. Thank you.
Natalie Kloss, Celeste.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. So I'm Natalie. I'm a 17-year-old senior in high school. I go to the new school in Atlanta, and recently my entire high school went to the Okefenokee for a field trip for a few days. And it was an amazing experience. It was a learning experience. We've been focusing on it in our biology and our AP environmental science classes for weeks, and we've been learning about how if this mining were to go on, the entire ridge could be disrupted, and then the water level could reduce, and then the peat could be exposed, and wildfires could continue on for years. And that's exactly what we heard from rangers down the park. And beyond just the source of the swamp itself, it was just an amazing experience for young people to go. It's a beautiful place. It's inspiring, especially as someone who is going to be majoring in environmental science in college this fall. So I'd say please deny the permit. It's an invaluable resource for students and for young people, especially now. And I think it would be a shame for Georgia to be the one that allows it to be unprotected. Thank you.
That is all the names on the list of registered commenters.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rhett Schley. For those in attendance, if you did not register to speak, please raise your hand to indicate you would like to provide a comment. If you're using the telephone number to participate, please press *9 to raise your hand. I do apologize in advance if I mess up anyone's names. I will try my best. Thank you. Let's see. First up is Emily Floor.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Emily.
Great, thank you. I apologize. I think my computer was having issues earlier when I was called upon. My name is Emily Floor. I'm the Executive Director for St. Mary's Riverkeeper, which is charged with protecting and enriching the St. Mary's River through water quality monitoring, education, and advocacy. The St. Mary's River forms the border between Southeast Georgia and Northeast Florida. Arising from the Okefenokee Swamp, the river flows 130 miles to the Atlantic Ocean, emptying at Cumberland Island National Seashore. Bookended by two national treasures, our St. Mary's River is pristine from swamp to sea, but a river is only as healthy as its headwaters and tributaries. In 2022, Georgia DNR declared two segments of the St. Mary's River safe for recreational use, Deep Creek to Boone Creek and Prospect Landing Road to Little St. Mary's. This upgrade means that the segments are safe for general recreational activities such as water skiing, boating, and swimming, and recreational fishing. The proposed mine site sits right on the crest of the ridge, so there is a hydrologic divide running through the mine. Ironically, both sides of the ridge flow to the St. Mary's. The west side flows to River Styx, which flows to the swamp, which then flows to the St. Mary's, and the east side flows to Boone Creek, which is a tributary to the St. Mary's River. Currently, we are running a few experiential learning opportunities to experience the St. Mary's River, such as our recent paddle through Trail Ridge. The water levels of the upper St. Mary's is determined by the rainfall in the Okefenokee Swamp, with the river having zero flow during drought season and boaters traveling amongst the treetops during the rainy season. This stretch of river of the upper St. Mary's as it comes out of the swamp is truly unique, and you can go for miles without seeing a single home. With blue skies, green trees, white sandy shorelines, and the darkest black water, you cannot be in awe of this beautiful and spectacular place. Because of the extreme damage being posed to this watershed ecosystem by the mining project, National American Rivers Organization in 2020 named the St. Mary's River and the adjoining swamp among America's most endangered rivers. The concern St. Mary's Riverkeeper has in regards to the swamp, in regards to the mine on the swamp as the headwaters of the St. Mary's River, is the impacts for lower water levels, which can increase fire potential to the surrounding area, mostly comprised of timber and blueberry farms, degrading fishing and recreational opportunities at the St. Mary's, and disrupt the delicate ecosystem. Georgia EPD also recently suggested monitoring water levels of the St. Mary's River at the water gauge at McClenny instead of the water gauge at Moniac. The St. Mary's River looks drastically different at Moniac and McClenny, where at Moniac you can actually walk across it, you can step into the next state, and at the McClenny one, you have to swim across because it's 150 feet across. Also, upriver of the McClenny site, there are over a dozen tributaries that feed into the St. Mary's, and 3 of those are each over 20 miles long with their own headwater system. St. Mary's Riverkeeper is concerned of the impacts of water withdrawal, the water level monitoring, and the potential impacts of lower water levels and its impact on the St. Mary's River. Thank you for your time and putting this on.
Okay, next is Esther Stokes. Esther, if you'd like to speak, you're still muted.
I'm sorry, I have no comments to add to those that have already been made.
Thank you.
Next is Dorothy Head.
Dorothy, if you would like to provide a comment, please unmute.
Thank you. Sorry for the technological troubles this evening.
You're fine.
Representing Georgia Audubon this evening. Thank you for this opportunity to share comments. We share many of the concerns being expressed this evening about the proposed Twin Pine mines near the Okefenokee Swamp and the potential for irreparable damage to the trail ridge. Georgia Audubon has more than 2,400 members from all across Georgia, and we encourage EPD to deny the permits for this mine. The Okefenokee Swamp's 438,000 acres are a diverse ecosystem that provides critical habitat for both resident and migratory bird populations. The proximity of the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, one of Georgia's most precious ecological sites, only adds to our concern over the mining proposal and the impact it could have on this unique ecosystem. In addition to the concerns shared by others this evening, our concerns center around the bird life that use the Okefenokee Swamp, including birds like the red-cockaded woodpecker and Bachman's sparrow, prothonotary warblers, swallow-tailed kites, bald eagles, ospreys, and many other species that spend all or part of their year in the swamp. A recent study published in the journal Nature revealed that more than 3 billion birds, that's billion, have disappeared from North America in our lifetimes. We need to take immediate action to reduce the risk for Georgia birds, and denying mining permits in or around the Okefenokee Swamp is a no-brainer. In addition, each year, an estimated 250 million birds pass over Georgia during spring migration, and as many as 675 million pass over during fall migration. In the meantime, more than 250 species spend all or part of their year in the Okefenokee Swamp. The proposed mining activities, ranging from hydrology concerns to noise pollution, threaten the bird life of the swamp, who spend all or part of their year feeding, resting, or rearing young in the swamp. We are also concerned about the nighttime lighting from the Twin Pines mine in this dark sky park. Nationwide, more than 1 billion birds perish each year after colliding with buildings. Nighttime lighting is a major concern in the otherwise dark park, as our understanding is that the mine will operate 24 hours a day. Bright outdoor lighting attracts birds, trapping them in the beams of light where they become exhausted and fall to the ground. There, they are at risk from predation and structure collisions. For these and many other reasons that we will submit in writing, we encourage the EPD to deny Twin Pines' request to mine near the Trail Ridge and the Okefenokee Swamp. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our concerns this evening.
Next is Jennifer Bauer.
Hi there, I'm Jenny Bauer. I'm a North Carolina resident and a soil scientist, and I want to speak to an adverse impact that wasn't addressed in the report. So as multiple experts in hydrology and geology have discussed, it's extremely likely that the mining operation will lower the water level in the swamp. This will not only endanger the very existence of the swamp and its biodiversity, but potentially will release a massive amount of carbon into the air from the soil. So wetland soils are able to sequester large amounts of carbon because decomposition of organic matter is slowed by the water level and acidity. In fact, wetland soils store the most carbon of all soils on Earth, which is 20 to 30% of the total soil carbon pool. Soils store more carbon than the atmosphere and all the forests. The Okefenokee Swamp needs to maintain its water level to keep that carbon in the ground. If the water level drops, it'll rapidly be lost from the soils. Furthermore, given the increase in fire risk, we could see the worst outcome, which is that it could burn. We can look to another country, Indonesia, to see what would happen there. They cleared its wetlands for agriculture, and it burned in 2015, which during 40 days created more daily emissions than the entire United States economy. We have to make sure that a loss of carbon this big doesn't happen to the Okefenokee. The southeastern USA has lost many of its precious swamps and bogs over the past few hundred years, which has really created a problem for our ability to store carbon. And if Georgia and the USA has any commitment to preventing climate change or slowing climate change, we will stop mining from affecting this important carbon sink. So we have to say no to the Twin Oaks project and permanently protect the Okefenokee from destruction. Thank you.
Next is Richard Morgan.
Hello. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm a retired wetlands biologist. I worked for Savannah District Corps of Engineers for 30 years, retired in 2019. I was the project manager for the DuPont mining proposal. I know a little bit about titanium dioxide mining and mining companies, and I could talk for 2 hours, but I'll make this brief. The project is proposed as a demonstration project, and I'm curious what they propose to demonstrate. I can probably answer that question now. Nothing. This mine site is relatively small when you consider the hundreds of thousands of acres along Trail Ridge. And after this mine is complete, assuming it is permitted and done, it will show nothing. And as others have said, Twin Pines has several thousand acres that I'm sure they're planning on mining. Other mining companies have mines ready to go. I've talked to other miners. So this isn't about Twin Pines and 400 acres. It's about the entirety of Trail Ridge. And if this project is approved, just stand by. Thank you.
Next is Alex Scott.
Thank you very much. I'm the founder and former chair of the St. Mary's Earth Keepers. In 2006, I moved to St. Mary's, Georgia, in part because of the astonishing beauty of the surrounding environment. The river that cradles the town has shaped the area's history, culture, beauty, and economy. The St. Mary's River is born deep within the Okefenokee. The swamp is its mother. And anything that threatens the mother threatens the child. I've heard or read nothing that assures us there won't be damage to the St. Mary's River. Just look at Twin Pines' past performances. polluting the air of local communities in northeast Georgia, killing thousands of fish in Georgia waterways, violating air quality safeguards, illegally discharging mining waste into Florida wetlands, and operating without a permit in Florida. Twin Pines has already broken the law with this project. Without a county permit and comment period, they illegally bulldozed and graded land for their drag lines, facilities, and mining equipment. Clearly, this company and its proposed mine represents an existential threat to the swamp, its rivers, and the people who cherish and rely on both. What's most mystifying to me is why anyone would even consider this proposal. To consider allowing a titanium mine beside a potential UNESCO site, it boggles the mind. We respectfully ask that the EPD stop this insanity.
Next is Leslie Hand.
Leslie, it appears you're on mute. If you could unmute, you can begin to speak. Yes, go ahead and move on.
Okay, we're going to move on. Next is Nancy Jacobs. Nancy, if you would like to speak, you're going to have to unmute. There
Thank
you go.
you. Thank you for the opportunity to provide input on the mining land use plan. I'm asking that the EPD reject the Twin Pines Minerals mining permit application. I live in Bullock County here in Georgia, but my family has ties to Folkston and the surrounding area dating back several generations. I have visited the Okefenokee more times than I can count, and I grew up listening to tales of adventures in the swamp from my father and grandfather. I have followed the Twin Pines proposal closely. I attended the public meeting in Folkston in 2019, as well as more recent online public meetings such as this one. One constant has been the impressive and overwhelming opposition to this mining proposal. I'm grateful to the experts who have spoken this evening, urging EPD to deny this application. I'm deeply concerned that the Twin Pines mining operation will result in hydrologic and water quality changes that will forever damage the natural beauty of the Okefenokee, the St. Mary's, and Suwannee rivers. The potential for unrecoverable damage to our natural resources from the proposed demonstration project and the subsequent mining operations that will undoubtedly arise if this foothold is enabled demands that any decision be fully informed about the environmental impact and that it prioritize environmental protection. There are simply too many unanswered questions regarding the Twin Pines application for this project to move forward. The risk is too great, and what we could lose will be irreplaceable. Please deny this application. Thank you.
Next is Elijah Waskin.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Elijah Dwoskin. I'm currently an undergraduate student at the University of Georgia, and I wholeheartedly hope that the EPD will decide to reject the permit for this mine. After listening tonight and hearing from experts who have studied the potential impacts, I think it would be an embarrassment for the state of Georgia to approve this permit, knowing that they're willingly ignoring what experts are saying. I'm not an expert on this case. I just love the mine. I love the swamp, and I would hate to see it destroyed by something that can be so easily prevented and has been prevented in the past. Again, I hope that EPD decides to reject this mine, as it is a bad idea.
Next is Mary Gibson.
Yes, hello. This is Mary Gibson speaking.
Hi, Mary.
Hi. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an expert on much of anything. I am a 73-year-old woman, a grandmother. I live in St. Mary's, Georgia, and I love the Okefenokee swamp. I've visited a number of times, many, many, many times in the 40 plus years that I've lived in coastal Georgia. Living in St. Mary's, 4 blocks from the St. Mary's River, is my dream. I have been here for 15 years. I love it, and I love the St. Mary's River, and I love the Okefenokee swamp. The idea that the EPD is even considering such an application boggles my mind. It is a betrayal of their very existence to consider such an ecological disaster. It has been my experience in life that there are 2 kinds of mistakes. There are mistakes that can be fixed, and there are mistakes that cannot be fixed. Mining in any way that would endanger the Okefenokee swamp, in my mind, is a mistake that cannot be fixed. There is no amount of money that can replace the watershed and ecological treasure that is the Okefenokee swamp. In listening to all of the experts speak, all of the scientists tell us why it shouldn't be done, simply underpins what I'm saying to you. As a simple woman who loves nature, who loves South Georgia, who loves the Okefenokee swamp, the St. Mary's River, and the Suwannee River, please do not allow this mine to proceed. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Next is Leslie Hand.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I am not great with technology. So my name is Leslie Hand. I am a resident of Brunswick, Georgia, and I just wanted to come on here and say I'm currently in the process of drafting a formal written comment, and I believe that the provided 60 days to adequately inspect the complex and numerous documents submitted by Twin Pines Mining, in addition to researching supporting documents, laws, regulations, etc., is severely inadequate. I would like to request additional time to this window so that I may be given a fair opportunity to articulate the reasons behind my strong opposition to this project, cite my references, and highlight any proposed actions that may be unlawful or inconsistent to the well-being of the ecosystem in and around the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, everybody. If there are no further comments, I'll send it back to Jamie to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you for your attendance at this public meeting. The division will consider these and all other relevant comments received throughout the public comment period that officially